Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girl, You Know It. We are so excited for you to join us for our second episode of season 5. For those who are joining for the first time, Girl, You Know It is an offshoot podcast from Black Women Connect Vancouver. Black Women Connect Vancouver is a collective of women and femmes who come together to inspire, empower, leverage our strengths, and embrace our diverse experiences. It's a community where folks in Vancouver can build meaningful relationships and celebrate the beauty of Black womanhood. Girl, You Know It is a space where we want to create connections in a different way to talk about our shared experiences as Black women in serious, fun, and everything in between. My name is Abby, and I am one of your regular hosts. Yes, I am the project coordinator of Black Women Connect Vancouver, but I will pass it off to my co-host to introduce herself.
Yes, thank you for that long introduction. Yeah. My name is Nataisa McQuavi, and I am the founder of Black Women Connect Vancouver, and I'm also one of your regular hosts this year. We're so excited. This year is going to be so good. Yeah, these conversations are much needed.
And we have the wonderful, the amazing Shelley-Anne Vidal here with us as our guest today. And we're so excited to have you. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Oh my goodness. Please introduce yourselves. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Sure. I will start off by saying that I was born in beautiful British Columbia. I'm one of those rare unicorns who was born here.
Same.
My parents, I know, right? My parents are originally from the Caribbean, and I am so excited to work in the spaces of equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm a community builder. I do an annual event called Phenomenal Black Women Networking and Social, and I'm a mother of a toddler. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a speaker and a facilitator. Community builder. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that.
Thank you.
How, you said a toddler? How like
she will be
right in the throes?
She will be 3 next month.
Wow.
Oh, yes. The thrilling 3.
Yeah, that's what they call it. Thrilling threes.
I'm just learning about this.
So very lively in your household.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you are here today to talk about something really wonderful and something that needs to be talked about. Why don't you share about your book?
She wrote a book, y'all.
Yes, we got an author in the house. I love it.
Yes, my book is called You Only Need One Good Egg, Manifesting a Miracle, and it shares a bit of my journey through motherhood. So I went through IVF, and I wanted to really share with others what my experience was like, choosing to have my daughter on my own as a solo parent. So I'm excited to share more about that in our episode today.
Awesome. Yeah. Your book title suggests that it focuses on hope and perseverance. Can you share a specific moment during your IVF journey when you held on to hope against kind of all the odds, especially as a single mother?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say right from the beginning, when I met with my GP and decided that, she actually told me that I had a very low probability of getting pregnant. And I was like, okay, what? So with that information, I had to then decide, like, what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
And she said that, we can go through and make a referral so that you can meet with a fertility doctor at a fertility clinic. And I said, okay, let me see what this is about. And so going through that process, I had to at least think like, okay, what if? If I didn't have that seed of what if, that mustard seed of just hope, then I would have just ended right there with what the doctor told me of like, you have a low probability of getting pregnant on your own, so good luck, right? And then if I were to fast forward when I was about to have my eggs extracted for the IVF process, part of the process was that they had to kind of like pump me with hormones to try and harvest as many eggs as possible.
Yeah.
And when I went in for the ultrasound to see how many eggs they were able to harvest, they said that they found 3 that were good. And I said, okay. And it was at that moment that the doctor said, well, I know you said, you want to go through IVF, but with 3 eggs, maybe we could look at IUI. And
what does that stand for?
That's what's it, in vitro? I forgot. I forgot what the IUI is.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry.
But what is it?
So
what is it?
Yeah. It's basically, so IVF is when they extract your eggs and then they like essentially in a petri dish, the sperm and the egg make their magic together and try to fertilize the eggs. If it's IUI, that's when they inject you with sperm. So then
you do it naturally.
Well, kind of. You're injecting sperm. Through the fertility clinic, they inject you with sperm that's been like washed and clean and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's a cheaper or more cost-effective method of it. I shouldn't say cheaper, but it's more cost-effective. And so she was saying that, well, if we're thinking about it from a cost recovery perspective, that might be an option for you. And I said, well, no, I've already paid for IVF.
Yes.
Let's do a Hail Mary. Let's go ahead and see if it's going to happen, right? Like, yes, there's 3 eggs. There's not as many, but let's just do it and see what happens. So again, I think in that moment, I had to make that decision of, let's see. I don't know if it's going to take or not, but if I don't try, I'll never know. And yes, it may have been a more economical opportunity to do IUI, but I wasn't even willing to take that. I
chance.
Said, at this point, let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
If it's to be, it'll be. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think during your whole process were like the most surprising aspects of IVF?
Surprising? Well, there was a few things for me. And it's funny because I think there is a few different schools of thoughts when people go through this type of process. Some may think like, I want to have all of the information, like give me everything and I'm just going to devour the information and go from there. There's others who like, just keep me in the dark. Like I'm just going to, and I think I was more on the keep me in the dark side because I didn't want information overload. You can go down the Google rabbit hole and just be inundated with information and then the fears. And I was like, no, I just want to be like on an information need to know kind of basis within reason. Within reason, right? I also had a few people in my life who had gone through the process. So being able to talk to them and
that's good.
And that definitely helped support me in this. But I think in terms of surprising things, one of the biggest, I guess, surprises was how much of a kind of business it is.
Yes, as I've heard of that too.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. It's less of that conversation relationship feel, but you're just going to the doctor. This is what it is. You need to make a payment, and that's what I find very interesting considering it's a journey that I feel does need a relationship, does need a conversation, but it's actually the opposite. It's a business.
It is totally a business. And it's like you're saying, like, we're talking about bringing life into the world, but it's very transactional.
Yes.
Like, here are the drugs, here are the medication, You're going to see a different doctor pretty much every time you go in for an appointment, even though like it may take you however long to get started with one particular doctor. Once you're in the clinic, they're kind of rotating different doctors and you're like,
that doesn't feel,
it's not as personal. Right. And so that was a bit surprising for me because I didn't expect that I would be kind of with all these different doctors working with them. And that was, I think, one of the bigger surprises for it.
And do you think during this process, you as a Black woman, did you face any like unique challenges or stigmas?
Absolutely.
Of course. I'm not surprised that I had to ask, but
Yeah. So earlier on in the journey, as I mentioned, I went through this process. I'm a solo parent. So what that meant is that I had to choose my donor sperm. And that was quite interesting because as a Black woman, I made a conscious choice that I wanted the donor sperm to be Black. And that proved to be a little more challenging.
To find donors.
Yes. Even though it was the sperm bank was within Canada and the US.
Okay. But that was harder.
It was still limited options.
Oh.
And it was,
wow.
It was interesting because it's like, you may have different criteria that you look at, and, it is what it is. But I found that I had to kind of broaden my criteria more than I would have normally. So it couldn't be like, oh, I want you to be like 6'5".
Yeah.
I was like, okay, bring it down a little bit. Keeping it real.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I remember kind of being a bit frustrated about that and reading an article about like two same-sex women who were Black, and they were discussing the challenges of being same-sex Black women and looking for a donor so that they can have a family.
Yeah.
That kind of look like them. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I hadn't even thought about that because that wasn't something that, initially before I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
But, and again, there's so many different donors out there, but if I wanted to kind of narrow it down to a similar race, it became more of a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Did they say why? Do you feel, or did you research after, or you're just kind of like, well, this is our,
no, I didn't. And I think I was just so happy when I found
something that
the donor that kind of fit my criteria that I would, and was available.
Yes.
Because that's the other thing. Just because you found the criteria, it didn't mean that donor sperm was necessarily available when you needed to purchase it. So,
really? Yeah. What does that mean?
I know, right?
What? So do they give you this book and they're like, here are the list? I'm just like, you're flipping through the page.
Think about like online dating.
Okay.
Profiles.
Oh.
So it is like the movies when they're like looking for a book.
Right.
My goodness. And then you were like, this one, and they're like, we'll see if it's available.
Exactly.
We'll see if it's available.
Like the vials available or not available, or how many vials are available, and how many pregnancies have been successful with this donor. Have there been any successful ones? Yes or no? Right. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I would never have thought that would be an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's like, maybe I should just randomly find dude off the street, right? Like a little club one, hey. But no.
By that time.
No.
Thank goodness. Absolutely not.
Because
Exactly. But the thing, it's interesting though, because it's like, you can kind of have your wish list.
Yes.
It's like, I wish dating was like this.
Yeah.
What's your family background, your blood type, your this, your that, your family's mental health kind of like background, like your mental health background. Like they do a lot of screening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, medical history of like all the things. You're like, oh, okay. Are your blood types going to match or not? Like things, there's things.
There's so
that
much.
when you're out in the clubs and these
You're not
streets,
thinking about that when you grind it.
It's not on the top of your list, right?
It's been long. It's been a long time.
Has it been?
Yeah.
What happened last night?
Oh my goodness. Anyways, get back on track. How would you, so as you're dealing with this, how did you deal with the healthcare system and the providers during your journey?
Yeah.
Was it an easy process, or was it like, yes, I'm single. Yes, I'm doing this alone. Like, did they,
was a stigma behind that too? Or they just were like, we just want your money. They're like, we just want, you know what I mean?
that it was
right
just
there.
that?
Yeah. Because it's a private, Yeah. Because could you talk about a little bit about like our healthcare system and how it doesn't cover the costs of this?
Yeah.
Because I think that's also a conversation that people don't realize.
Yes.
Yeah. The significant
That was another
costs.
surprising thing for me, because I found out that there's a number of provinces that cover at least the first cycle of it. And ours was not one of them. However, I understand it's changing now.
It's changing now, yeah.
Which is so
good.
exciting. Because I thought to myself, I was like, and I wrote about this in the book, is like, for decades, we've heard the government say, oh, there's a shortage of labor. Okay, great. We understand that there's a shortage of labor. So what are you doing to support families who say, you know what, we want to expand our families, but financially we just can't afford to go through IVF.
Yeah.
And sometimes, right, like we don't know people's situations, right? There may be a medical history as far as like maybe they had cancer, this and that, the other, that prevents them from being able to conceive naturally, so to speak, right? So they may need some medical assistance. But if the government's not supporting that, then, but yet you're saying like, we need more people. I'm like a little bit of a disconnect right there. So I think, that's
because it's so nothing's covered, right? It's all out of
it's out of pocket. Like some, depending on who your employer is. Some if your employer some employers cover.
I have heard of that.
Or they may cover a portion of the medication. But a large part of it is not covered. However, I would say like when you're doing your taxes at the end of the year, you can claim some of your medical expenses, but it's not. But still, you still got to have some money. And it's talking about the fertility clinics being a business, like in part of the onboarding or starting there, like they talk about financing, how you could finance it. Here's a financial institution that you could potentially take out a loan. It's like, wow. Oh, okay. Yeah. Right. Cause that's the reality. Yes. And there are some people who go through multiple cycles and their savings is wiped clean trying to get pregnant. Right. And I was very fortunate because I was able to conceive in the first cycle. And as I mentioned, they only extracted 3 eggs. Wow. And all 3 fertilized. Wow. Yeah. So it's, definitely it is a miracle that I have her. And I didn't understand it so much until my acupuncturist and the lab tech at the fertility clinic that called me. They were both very excited. Like, oh, they all fertilized well, like all 3. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, is this not common? Yeah, exactly. But from the excitement in their voice, clearly it wasn't. Yeah. Like, all right. Wow.
Especially you just had those chosen 3.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
That's amazing.
That is incredible.
Did you find when you decided to, okay, I'm going to go through this IVF journey, having those conversations with family and close friends, were there some people who said, are you sure about this? Or everyone was, no, we really want to see this happen for you. How can we support you? Do you still feel there's a stigma out there for one, solo parenting and IVF?
I think in my immediate circle, people were supportive, at least in my face.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
You don't know what they say.
I don't know what they did. But I mean, like definitely my parents and my siblings and like other close friends and cousins, they were all like, you know what, Shelley, I think you'd be a great mom. Yes, like it's not going to be easy, but I think you could do it. And we're here for you. We're here for you. Let us know whatever you need. And even just like having conversations about like getting a doula and looking for a midwife. You want to start that early.
Because that's like, only a section of the journey. And then you're pregnant.
Yeah. Well, this is it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that part. And then after that, it's like, 9 months of the pregnancy and then what, right? Who's supporting you after that?
Yeah. And did you feel like your family and friends were
and again, I
community?
took the advice of getting a doula.
Yes.
There was 2 doulas that I hired that worked together collaboratively. And then the midwives, I found it worked best for me.
Yeah.
Because I had people who came to me from an educational perspective and they had time for my care. Yes. It wasn't like checking the box.
Right after you just dealt with the very business of IVF.
Yeah.
Having those people beside you.
Yeah. And it felt like community and support. And I never once felt like I was rushed out the door.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Because that, like when you're going through this for the first time and you don't know what to expect and your body's changing and there's hormones happening, it's great to have people who are just going to sit down and like just give you space and just check on you, like your emotional side, not just like, okay, we've checked the box, we've made sure that all the medical stuff is done and that's done. Yeah. Okay, next patient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I noticed when I decided to go the midwife route, there was still some stigma. A lot of people were like, you want a midwife? You don't want an OBGYN? Don't you need a doctor? There's still midwives. And I'm just like, midwives are actually way more common now. And people want more midwives because of that, because of the relationship, because you're out. I think for me, my sessions were an hour. Every appointment was always an hour for me to sit down, have a conversation. And most times I was kind of like, because I'm one of those people that researches everything. Yeah. So they're like, do you have any questions? Like, no, not really. I just want to make sure I'm healthy. But I can see why for other people, to be able to just sit down, just to be like, okay, let me have this conversation. Let me talk about this. And so I notice there's still a stigma, even for Black people to use the midwives, when I do feel that it actually should more like Black women should be going the midwife route because of that, because of the relationship aspect. And you're just not just like kicked out of the door. And I know there's high risk pregnancies and sometimes you do need to obviously go the OBGYN route, but I do think that one is actually a big stigma right now. And yeah, I feel like a lot of people still didn't understand really what midwives do.
I think you're absolutely right in that respect. I think because I told very limited people, and the people I told, for the most part, they were either they had used a midwife or they were kind of, just associated with that. It was a little easier, but I think if I had told more people, I'm sure there would have been definitely because even like the fact that I chose to go through this as a mature woman. And so there was that stigma of like, oh, well, hey, you're over 35. That means you're automatically, you're going to be high risk. And you definitely, like, I thought I wasn't going to be able to have a midwife. Right. Because I was, what did they call it? Geriatric.
Yes. I was geriatric too.
Although they changed the name. It's no longer geriatric.
What is it now?
I don't know. It's like
I don't even say. I say geriatric just because it's funny. Because like 35 geriatric. Yeah, I'm geriatric.
Okay. Everybody, calm down.
I know.
My goodness, ridiculous,
right?
Actually,
do you find so when you wrote the book? Let's talk about your book because you wrote a book, and that's so exciting. So, what was the process of you went through the journey, and then now you're like, okay, I wanted to share my story. I want more women to hear about it. What was your experience writing the book? What was the purpose of writing the book, and how did you feel when you finished the book?
Great questions. First off, I want to say that I had a book coach. My book coach, his name is Rassi, and
shout out to Rassi.
Yeah, Rassi is awesome with RB Jumpstart Coaching. She's a book coach, and if I didn't have her to hold me accountable, I probably would not have written and published a book in the time frame that I did. I don't even know if I really would have done it. A large part of the reason why I decided to write this book is because I wanted to document my journey so that when my daughter was older, she would know what mommy went through and why mommy went through it to bring her into the world.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's not as common and talked about to go through this route as a solo parent. There's still a stigma around it. Like, oh, you chose to do that. Oh my goodness. And what about this? And what happens when, what are you going to tell her when people ask, where's her father? Blah, 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 blah. Right. So I wanted her to know that she came from a place of pure love. And like, I was intentional about the process. She wasn't a mistake. She wasn't an accident. It was totally like mommy, like, thought about this long and hard. Yeah. And that there was a community around to support us bringing her into the world. And then after, there's still a community that supports her growing up in this world. Yeah. What was the other question?
The process of writing the book. So how did you feel writing? Because you have to kind of think back of, okay, what happened? What did I experience? Were there things that you have to have processed? So you're like, I never really thought about it when I was going through it. Because sometimes when you go through like a medical experience, you're just kind of like, you're in the moment, I need to get this done. But was it therapeutic for you?
I would say yes. And I'm somebody who tends to journal. So I was able to document that, even if it wasn't, with pen and paper journaling. Sometimes I did video recordings. Or sent messages to some of my close friends being like, I just went for the ultrasound. I just heard the first heartbeat and so going back through some of those text messages. Yeah. that was really cool.
That must have been so special.
Absolutely. And then being able to kind of inject that into the book.
Yeah.
It was powerful. Again, it's to document it for her and then to hopefully inspire others who are thinking about this and have no idea of what they're potentially embarking upon. In terms of the process, I mentioned the book coach being so pivotal because when I started writing the book, my daughter was, I think she was about 6 or 9 months old, somewhere around that. And so I had the book coach to keep me accountable, which was great because with lack of sleep and all the things, it's like, how do you do this? Yeah. But I'm also someone who, if I commit to something, I try to follow through as best as I can. And so there would be times where, like my daughter would be sick or whatever. So I'd have to delay my submission for that chapter, maybe a few days or something like that. But for the most part, I had the book coach to keep me accountable so I could just get it all out there. Yeah. And then she walked me through the process of getting an editor and making sure that we had the cover done. And so again, that was a collaborative effort in that respect. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm just doing this on my own. Like I had that support so that it could be achieved.
I love that. Well, there's a lot of women out there who may be struggling with infertility. What would you suggest to them if they are considering IVF?
I would say, first of all, don't just take one person's advice. Definitely get multiple opinions. I visited a couple of fertility clinics. I didn't just go with one. Yeah, because I found that the first one I went to, it just wasn't the right fit for me. Right. And when I went to the second one, it seemed better. I would also say, try to reduce the stress that's going on in your life because stress is real and it impacts our fertility. And we don't talk about that often enough. It impacts fertility and pregnancies, right? So I made sure that I was seeing, like I had a whole wellness regime, right? So my acupuncturist was huge. My RMT was huge. Those were all part of making sure kind of my stress levels were brought down, deciding to take certain things off my plate in terms of things with work and like community work, just reducing that full plate that was always runneth over so that I could make space in my time and my life and my soul and everything to expand my family.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What are your hopes for the future with IVF and fertility treatments to support women, particularly Black women, who are facing the similar challenges?
My hopes would be that we would talk more. I think that's another part of the reason why I wrote the book is I didn't look like extensively out there for research to see if there were other folks who had gone down this road locally as a Black woman in Canada, who put it out there, put their stories out there. I think we hear a lot of celebrities and they talk about it and you're like, and for me, one of the things I thought was like, oh, I don't know if I can afford this. Like, only rich people do this. Right. But it's not as out there as people think, right? There are ways to kind of navigate it. So I would say my hope is definitely that I would love for us to have more conversations like this and to know that you're not alone and that it is possible. And the importance of creating that community, your wellness community. Those are definitely some hopes so that it's not as stigmatized. And I think around the idea of it being stigmatized, there's that stereotype of being a Black woman who's a single mom and blah, blah, and it's like, well, yes, and we can create a new narrative of what it means to be a solo parent and raise strong, beautiful children. It doesn't have to be an either or. It's just another expansion of how we choose to exist and our identity in society.
Are there any future projects that you're working on or initiatives that you'd like to share with us? It's coming up.
Sure.
Anything?
I think that definitely in terms of doing more speaking engagements, whether it's talking about my journey to fertility or my journey through fertility to motherhood, and also continuing to advocate for more inclusion. So equity, diversity, inclusion. Those are things that I'm passionate about because it really creates a stronger community for all.
So true.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But-
I wanted to ask, okay, we did not talk about this, but do you want to read a little bit of your book? I see all these like
People need to hear it for sure.
Is there something in particular that you would like to hear about within the book that I can share? I mean, I'm happy to read. I mean, is there anything?
Maybe you're like your
table of contents that's kind of percolating in there.
I say Taking a Leap of Parenting. That one.
Taking the lead. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes. I like this one. I mean, I like it all, but biased at all? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So it's in chapter 1, Taking the Leap, page 12. Choosing to be a mom means something different for every mother. As someone who is an educator by profession and passion, I often think of my students as my children, no matter their age. I truly care about their well-being and their success. I enjoy encouraging them and empowering them in their career journeys. If I were to answer the question, what does it really mean to be a mom? I would say that a mom cares about her children. She is loving, kind, compassionate, strict, fair, and ready to lend an ear and a heart when it's needed. I know for a fact that motherhood is more than biological. For me, no matter what motherhood looked like, I was determined to be a mother.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to our podcast, this episode of Girl You Know It. You can find Shelley. What are your platforms?
I'm on Instagram, Act by Vidal. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Yeah. All those beautiful platforms.
Awesome. And you can also find us as well on all of those platforms. Yes, like YouTube, Spotify, everywhere. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah. We love your story. We love your willingness to share. And
that's inspiring.
Yes, very inspiring. We hope to have you again.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely.
I feel like there's so much more.
We just touched the surface. Like right at the top, right?
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
Next time. Thank you for listening to our podcast episode. You can find us in all streaming platforms, and you can watch our video recording up on YouTube channel, Black Women Connect Vancouver. Until next time.